Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
And I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics on this show range from theology, masculinity, stories, movies, philosophy, books, pop culture, and many other subjects. We often talk about the people we admire and the wisdom that they share. People such as Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. Michael, why are we here?
Today we're talking about Jordan Peterson's Exodus seminars that he does in behind the paywall of Daily Wire. They're actually starting to put them on YouTube. I don't know if you saw that, but they're starting to put them on YouTube. This is kind of cool. So what if they catch up to us, we might have to go through one of them, and we could even use clips because YouTube you can do that. But and for those who don't know, he's just got all these scholars and they sit around a table and talk about the Exodus story. They read through it and they kind of hit on from things that they just want to talk about in that. And we like kind of talking about it because I mean it's the book, the Bible that our society, so to speak, is kind of built on, for better or for worse. A lot of people don't like that, but yeah. So let's just hit it.
Yeah, we usually use it as like a jumping off point for a longer discussion. So, so if you've audience members, if this interests you, go watch the Exodus 6 seminar with Jordan Peterson on the Daily Wire Plus platform, and then come listen to this if you want more of the same, more discussion on it. And we already have 5 episodes out about this topic, so it really is just a jumping off point. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to kind of touch on, they had a long discussion about the ritual how that psychologically benefits children. Bedtime ritual, brushing teeth, getting ready for bed, dinner, storybook, that sort of thing. And that is how you combat chaos in your life. Because according to Jordan Peterson, he was saying that when children don't have this kind of ritual in their lives and it's really chaotic and they go to bed late or they get up really early and it really wreaks havoc on their psyche. Right. They become chaotic adults, people that have a hard time with things being normal or whatever, so
I've been trying to get back into the working out in the mornings routine. Right. And a lot of guys will talk about how, I think Jocko Willink says this, but basically motivation is not a thing, or do not allow it to be a thing. You adopt the discipline and you act on that discipline,
the ritual,
whether you feel like it or not. Because this whole motivation thing, now I'm in sales, so like motivation
is a big deal.
You got to get your head right, and there's things that are it's true that you can do things and help to help kind of motivate yourself, watching the right stuff and listening to the right music, etc. But he says adopt the discipline of it, which would be like getting up and working out, whether you feel like getting up and working out or not. Right.
The like ritual of it. It's got to be ritualistic.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's like, as well, it's not just working out, but it's like brushing your teeth. You were kind of mentioning, right? It's you brush your teeth. Oh, I'm tired. I don't feel like, no, you brush your teeth before you go to bed, regardless of if you're tired or if you feel like brushing your teeth, you just brush your teeth. And that's what you try to instill in your kids. Like,
and this is something that Dennis Prager, who's on the seminar, he on the panel, I guess is what it would be. He mentioned a story a while back, that he said to his rabbis, but I don't feel like I don't feel like praying today. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. You pray anyway, because that is the ritual. And then if it becomes a ritualistic, it just is automatic. Then when times are tough, it'll mean so much more to you because you've been able to do it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an interesting take on all that.
And they talk a little bit about, when you have rituals, it brings more importance to things like holidays.
Yes.
And I thought this was really, really cool because, like everybody else, I love Christmas, right? But like growing up, I have some like really like magical memories growing up where the kind of the tradition or the ritual, if you will, was like the greatest thing, right? It was the tradition of how we did things, waking up and opening the presents, or decorating the tree, like all these things kind of, uh and they talk about like I think they talk about Independence Day, or maybe I was just thinking about it because
no, July 4th.
Independence just
no,
happened.
They talk about July 4th, how it doesn't mean what it used to mean for people. It's a day off to do hot dogs and fireworks.
Yeah.
But it's a ritual of celebrating the independence of our country. And Dennis Prager was kind of lamenting that nobody actually talks about what the greatness of the country. It's all just become ritual. Like, so even when it is ritual, they're basically saying you still need to remember why the real ritual is happening, right?
Yeah.
And this is why the Jewish people, so they have a long discussion about unleavened bread and why the Jewish people celebrate the Passover. That's really what they're talking about when it comes to ritual. And then they talk about the remembrance of slavery versus freedom, and how the Independence Day doesn't actually mean Independence Day to some people. And then Dennis Prager again says, well, the uniqueness of freedom is what we should be celebrating.
Right.
And you should not forget, you should still think about slavery as this bad thing.
100%. Yeah.
But at the time, it was very normal all over the world.
Yeah.
And centuries before, and it was just a normal thing to have slaves.
Yeah.
Wealthy people had slaves, and it's bad, and people know it's bad. The uniqueness of freedom in a free country and a country that governs itself is what's unique, and that's what we should be celebrating.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, and it's kind of interesting. Anyway, we probably don't need to get into it, but the founders did want to address slavery, but the South was more dependent on slavery, just due to the economics of it.
Yeah.
And they
which is no justification for it, but that's
100%.
I think
well, let's
Thomas Jefferson actually wrote it in that it was all men, and including slaves, or something like that.
Something like that. And they had
of independence.
They kind of had to,
or no, it was the Constitution. They were trying to put it into the Constitution when they were writing it, but then they got so much blowback from the southern states that they just were like, okay, this is going to have to be something we address later. And they did.
Right.
It took them 80 years or almost 100 years to get back to it's over
to get rid of it.
To get rid of it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, at the time there were still abolitionists about, but we got to remember that through human history, slavery was part of the economic setup for everyone.
But that still doesn't
It doesn't.
justify it.
I'm not.
It
Yeah,
just
no,
was.
just not justifying it at all.
Yeah.
But let's just understand the times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, um, uh, uh, but yeah. Anyway, and that really the Exodus story,
Is about freedom.
is about that, right?
It's about
That's what abolitionists were pointing out. They were pointing out this story when trying to
free the
fight,
slaves in the United
free the
States. Yeah.
slaves. Yes. So I just made a note here that they were talking about this a little bit because somewhere it was talking about how the innocent suffered as well, and they were mentioning that in a totalitarian state, everyone will suffer, even the innocent. And this is one thing to just kind of keep in mind. People will point out and they'll be like, "Oh, well, how is he a loving God when the firstborn were killed and they were children, and that was innocence being killed, right?" Well, when you're a totalitarian state, everyone will suffer, even the innocent. Um, and that's just going to be part of the
well
the fruits. That's going to be just the fruits
of
of
a
totalitarianship. Yeah.
They'll always be innocent, right? Here's another interesting they talk about the 40 years in the desert. Was it literal 40 years, or was it
were they just picking a number? Yeah.
Yeah, or
they talk about that a little bit.
And what made me think about it is like the USSR, the Russia, they got out of a communist state in our lifetime, and they're still suffering the effects of it, to the point where they're invading other countries still. So it's like, after you've gotten out of the totalitarian state, doesn't mean that you automatically have flourishing, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of rare for the United States. In fact, it probably took the United States another couple decades to really become a fully functional country. I would imagine there was a bunch of growing pains during that time.
Oh, I'm sure.
But
After the Civil War, is that what you mean? After the Civil War?
No, after the Revolutionary War, when we became a country, I'm sure there was just tons of growing pains to try to.
100 that too, but also after the Civil War, there was going to be a lot of growing pains from that as well.
So, and what I'm thinking is that it's been almost 40 years since fall of communist Russia. And maybe that we're seeing the last, what is it, the drum roll or whatever like that for the end of that state, because maybe, hopefully maybe people rise up in Russia against their, the Putin, and take him out. I don't know what would be the solution right now, because they still seem to be in it. But the point is that the Israelites were wandering the desert for 40 years. It's not that big of desert. That's one thing that Dennis Prager points out, or I can't remember who pointed it out, but anyway, they point out that the desert isn't that big. So the wandering is referring, what they believed, what these dignitaries on this panel believe, is more of the mental wandering of trying to still be free, to be their own state, to create their own state.
To build to be able to become their own nation.
And it took them 40 years.
And I'm sure that that probably fell a lot on like Moses's shoulders, which we've talked about in other episodes, because it did all fall on Moses's shoulders, and he was trying to take care of all the problems, And Jethro, his father-in-law, had to come to him and be like, listen, you can't do this. And then they had to set up like a order of command kind of thing,
a
where
hierarchy. Yeah.
a hierarchy, exactly, for leadership in over the people, so that it didn't all just fall right on Moses, which really is kind of where I want to say that our nation built up kind of in that sense. It's supposed to be a hierarchy of because like,
and checks and balances.
Right. So like our city has like a city council and a mayor, and like they are supposed to take care of things that just are involved with just the city. And then outside of that, there's a county, right? And then the county has the county commissioners and the and then from the county you've got the state.
It's essential, right? Like it's just a government, right? And
it's local government that grows from smaller to bigger. And then you have the state, and the governor is really supposed to be like a president of their state, being able to kind of run their state. And then from there it grows to the federal government, which really, I mean, if you think about it, because of that, the situation was supposed to be set up that you would care more about who your governor is than who your president is, because your governor
would be more in charge,
would be, or even your freaking mayor would probably have more power over your day-to-day life than
the president would,
the president of the United States.
And then that's changed, right?
Yeah, I mean, just the way our system is all set up, it's like the president is is like the movie star that everybody wants to look at, and that's the big deal. Now, since the president has actually gained more power, basically people need to realize that their governor probably is more important to their everyday life than the president of the United States. It's just funny that
how many people know their governor? Like, how many people know who their governor is? Everybody knows who the president of the United States
of the United States is. They get all the publicity and everything, right? But I would argue that the governor would actually be the one that's more, that you should care about more than who the president of the United, like how far away, I don't even know, but like how far away is Washington to Utah or Wyoming, right? It's like, it's like, why should we give all of our
attention to Washington, D.C., what goes on in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. I mean, but like I was kind of saying, the president has gotten more and more power as the years have gone on, which I think is why, I mean, it's become kind of this more kingship thing where they have so much power, and that's why people care more and more about who ends up being the president, because more and more power has been kind of I don't know about probably usurped, but who maybe more and more power has been given and usurped to the president, which, I mean, honestly, guys, that should scale back. We should scale it back to where it really doesn't affect you much who the president is, because then we could probably take a big chill pill and not
the whole country
have a complete meltdown from one side or the other on every 4 years.
Yeah. That's definitely.
So,
Well, I wanted to move on to the importance of remembrance, remembering the Holocaust. They talk about this and remembering that's the whole point of Passover is remembering them getting out of the bondage of slavery. And one thing that I thought was really interesting, they talk about the pain. Do we remember the pain and suffering, or do we remember the ability to get through it?
Mm,
Like,
right.
what
Yeah.
should we be remembering? Is it the spirit, like Jordan Peterson says, is it the spirit of Solzhenitsyn and Viktor Frankl that we should be propping up and remembering? Not like necessarily the victimization of the Jewish people during the Holocaust, but like remembering how they got through it
Yeah, the
and the
people who
ability
survived
people who survived. Yeah,
and um and thrived after,
because we
like,
got what do we got
in
like 15 years, 15, 20 years before the Holocaust is 100 years old.
oh gosh, wow. Jeez, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
It's
it's about
crazy to
20
think about.
about 20 years, I think. Yeah.
But um but I like that point because, and this is pointed out in Viktor Frankl's book, which is basically, no one, people can take everything from you. They can take your, I mean, your home, the clothes on your back, and your, like, remove your name and put a number on you, but they
Yeah.
can never take how you decide to react with the world. Like, they can never take the, what's inside.
The
And
ability to push forward, to
right,
persevere.
right,
Yeah.
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 um uh
And then and on that note, I mean, Jordan Peterson says remembering the past is so you don't repeat stupid mistakes.
right.
And that would be a big mistake to try to eradicate an entire um, group of people.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, and it would be a mistake to forget it,
Yeah,
right?
it'd be a mistake to forget
um
it.
and forget that it happened. I was listening to Chris Williamson had, shoot, Mike Glover on,
Mm-hmm.
and he's kind of a prepper special, like, I guess, a preparedness specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Ex CIA, ex not Navy SEALs. I think he was a Ranger, but uh and he
What
was
was
talking about how the fact that people, because Chris brings up the question, like, you know, in this new day and age of internet, how, like, there's no way we would, do something as inhumane as, um as a Holocaust type of thing. And he's just like, listen, I mean, Germany was rampant with art and industry and education, like,
yeah,
all of that still
and they still
still
found a way to
found a way, yeah,
dehumanize an
to,
entire
it
group of
just,
people.
it took the right circumstances, it took, but I mean, people will still do bad things to each other. And you just, not to be negative about the human race, but you 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 want to be careful of that, and Jordan talks about, the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, that's having a sword, knowing how to use it, and choosing not to.
Yeah,
Turns out, if you have a sword and you know how to use it, I have a sword and I know how to use it, and we both choose not to, that might actually be more peaceful than if I have a sword and know how to use it and you do not. And therefore we're basically not even equals,
yeah,
right? It's a different dynamic there. um but but yeah,
that's
anyway.
an interesting. Well, I like how you put that, because if it's, yeah, that's the way to keep the peace. Like, what is, I forget who said this, but it was talk softly but carry a big stick.
I think it was Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Maybe
In other words,
he.
meaning that you don't do anything except in defense, kind of thing.
Right.
You have to be the dangerous monster to be able to defend. So,
yeah. I made a note of this, but I didn't work out my thoughts on it, but I think it was Jonathan Paggio, that was saying something about the parting of the Red Sea was a redemption story and a creation story, kind of all wrapped up into one. And if you think about it, the parting of the Red Sea, then they talk about this a little bit, is really the kind of the final, it's kind of the final leg in getting away from the tyranny. And it's also the time when the tyrant's army gets destroyed. So so it really is kind of that last bit of freedom. And and I thought that was interesting. It's a redemption story because they're getting away, they're being redeemed from the past. Right? The past is now behind them. But it's also a creation story.
Separating them with a C, right?
Yeah.
It's separating them.
Now they're completely separated from the totalitarianism.
Yeah.
But it's also a creation story because it's the very beginning. It's the beginning of something new. And I just thought that was fascinating.
Well,
right?
I'm surprised that Horowitz didn't point this out, but this is like the end of a movie where the hero has to cut the wire on the bomb, and this is the last hurrah. And so what are they going to do? Well, God opens up the sea and they escape through the sea, and then they close it, and then it's like in a narrative, this would be the
culmination.
A moment of a narrative. This would be like the end of the story, because in a narrative, it is also the beginning of a new story. So it would be like the sequel would come out. We just talked.
Or if it's throughout the adventure, the hero finds the love interest, and then and then the culmination of beating the tyrant,
the bad guy,
and then it's off to happily ever after, right?
Yeah,
but happily
right
ever
off
after
into the sunset,
really
kind of thing.
Its own, riding off into the sunset. It's its own beginning, right? That it allows you to just kind of imagine, okay, well, they're happy now and they're having kids and blah blah blah, whatever, right? Which sometimes is the kind of the bad side of a sequel, right? I mean, this is a good example, and that would be Mask of Zorro, right? Mask of Zorro, it's right off in the sunset, right? It's like they and it was super cute because they have the kid together and they win, and California is in a good place and everything. And then they come with a sequel, and it's like, oh, well, they go through a divorce and they break up and blah blah blah, and like his kid hates him, and just right. So I think it's the really careful spot. You have to be really, really careful about your sequels, because sometimes I think it's just better to be left to the imagination.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, but if the Exodus had a sequel, I guess it would have been, well, it's rolling around in the desert for 40 years.
Yeah. So
right.
Well, and there's other stories that happen from that, but I don't.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
I guess
them,
the sequel
right?
would have been probably started with David and Goliath, right?
Yeah.
Or Joshua, probably, yeah, Joshua
Joshua
and
and the walls of
the
Jericho, that kind
walls
of
of
stuff.
Jericho. Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
I had a thought here. They just kind of mentioned this in passing a little bit. They talk about it a little bit, but and God leads the children of Israel in a cloud. And I he's guiding them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the guiding sense is shrouded in mystery. And I was thinking about this. I was just like, that's interesting, right? The guiding ethic is still shrouded in mystery. Probably because that guiding ethic, we're still trying to wrestle with it, right? We haven't, and maybe never do we like completely have it figured out, right? But it's the guiding ethic that's shrouded in a cloud. And I was trying to think, what could that mean?
That's like God, right?
Yeah.
You're
The
shrouded
mystery of
in
it,
the
right?
mystery of it. Yeah.
Like that, whoever you think God is, like what he
It,
is and
yeah.
how he is, and
Yeah.
and if he's real and all these, it's like it's all shrouded in this mystery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what they're trying to portray in the story. They're being guided by something, but it's very mysterious.
Well, and maybe that's why it took them 40 years, right? Because
Yeah,
if you don't if you don't get told outright, then it's just always gonna take a little bit longer.
right.
Right.
Yeah. I think in it's interesting. I had never really thought about it much in the story, because because I've read the story before, and the fact that God was guiding them in a cloud. And it's like, what? Like, why? What is that? But if you think about it, when you are trying to conceptualize God, it's a mystery. It's all
Yeah.
shrouded
Yeah.
in mystery and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm just like, oh,
That's
so
interesting.
maybe that's what they were trying to portray. Like that might be why it was a cloud, right? Because that's how they wanted to portray it,
Yeah.
is a mystery,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Yeah,
cra-
I
that's
thought that was
yeah,
interesting.
that is interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. Well, and speaking of the cloud thing, Dennis Prager posits this idea. He's like, is there any equivalent to non-believing um um secular people studying a text as heavily as they are in this seminar?
Mm.
And Greg Horowitz posits like people do it with Shakespeare, uh, which is, and I would think that it's very close to Star Wars fandom.
Possibly,
Because
yeah.
if you ever tune into Film Threat, they have a YouTube channel. They're a bunch of guys that get together and they're doing Critics Court.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about the end of the Star Wars franchise, and it's basically hours long of these people
Right,
discussing
right.
why it's not as good anymore,
Yeah.
And so this is very close to this seminar, this Exodus seminar, is because they're discussing something that everybody has an affinity for, and this happens in fandom. I would, I that's what I thought. And then people do it with Shakespeare. People do it with the founding documents, like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So it was interesting that they said that, and that's what made me think of like Star Wars fandom.
Yeah.
You and I have even done an hour just talking about it. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, and we've talked, and we'll do reviews on movies where we could go on and on and on talking
yeah,
about movies, the story, the why this, why that, and I think what Dennis was kind of pointing to was just that it's really like he was just loving the fact that they were doing this, right?
yeah,
That they were all these scholars in their own right were
yeah.
sitting around recording them discussing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I and like and I think it's important that we watch those guys and we talk about it
Yeah.
because we are talking about stories, believe them or not, like them or not,
Mm-hmm.
helped frame the society we live
That we
in.
live in. Yeah. 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 And,
Like,
and as people reject it, it seems like the value of discussing it gets more prevalent.
it could be even, yeah, it could be that much more important that we are discussing these stories because of uh because of all the craziness and I mean freaking the
Up is down,
wokeism
down is
and
up.
AI. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
like,
All the things that we find ourselves discussing and talking about, it seems broken, and maybe that like in the past, religion has brought people together. So you'd hope that it could do it again.
brought them together and brought hope,
Yeah,
right?
hope for the
Like,
future. Yeah,
I mean, because it we with all the craziness, sometimes, yeah, I think we need to take a step back and look at the ancients and their wisdom, um, uh, be because of the craziness times that we're
yeah.
living in. I think that's uh and hence here we are and we're talking about all this. So
I think that's a good place to stop, brother.
yep.
So we'll wrap this one up. Well, it's always fun doing these, and I hope people tune in, watch them, get something from them. We will continue on with this series, and we'll post them as they come, kind of thing. So if you already haven't checked it out, go check out the Exodus seminars, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's Exodus seminars on the Daily Wire Plus subscription. Michael, our socials.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter at Brothers V Random. On Twitter, we're on Instagram and Facebook and Rumble at the Brothers Random. And you can email us the brothers random v at gmail.
Yeah, and check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave a comment, leave a message, like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you guys are interested. Just a friendly reminder. It helps us kind of grow. Keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. Thanks, brother.
See ya.
See ya.